Our neighborhood looked perfect from the outside. Rows of neatly trimmed hedges, pristine sidewalks, and houses that all seemed cut from the same mold of suburban perfection. But beneath that clean surface lurked something rotten, our homeowners association. When my wife and I first moved into the community, we thought the HOA was there to keep things organized and fair. Instead, it turned out to be a group of power-hungry bullies, driven by greed and control. They issued constant fines for nonsense infractions, our grass being a shade too long, our garbage cans placed 6 inches too far from the curb, even a fine, because my wife's flower pots were apparently not in accordance with HOA-approved color schemes. At first, I brushed it off as typical bureaucracy. But then things escalated. The president of the HOA, a smug man named Richard Crane, started sending us threatening letters. When my wife dared to attend a meeting and speak up about unfair fines, Richard's smug smile turned to outright hostility. "You don't want to make enemies here," he told her in front of everyone, his voice dripping with menace. We laughed it off at dinner that night, until the harassment grew darker. Cars began idling outside our home late at night. Our mailbox was mysteriously destroyed twice. Then came the unthinkable. One evening when I was away on business, a group of bikers rolled into our cul-de-sac. They weren't your average weekend riders. These were rough, leather-clad men with gang tattoos, the kind who looked like they had wrap sheets longer than their handlebars. Their engines thundered so loudly that neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, but quickly shut their blinds. And their target? My wife. She was standing on our porch watering her flowers when they pulled up. One of them, a burly man with a skull patch on his jacket, smirked and said, "Nice house. Shame if something happened to it." Another leaned forward, his voice like gravel, "Your husband needs to learn who runs this neighborhood." They revved their engines, trying to frighten her. My wife, bless her heart, tried to stay calm, but when one of them stepped closer onto our driveway, she froze. She later told me that for the first time, she genuinely thought something awful was about to happen. But fate works in strange ways. That was the exact moment I pulled up. I had just returned earlier than expected from my trip. I saw them before they saw me. I parked quietly down the street, walked toward our house, and took in the scene, the leather jackets, the intimidation, and most importantly, the way my wife stood there, her hands trembling but her eyes defiant. Something inside me snapped. You see, what those bikers didn't know was that I wasn't some mild suburban husband. My past wasn't exactly clean. I'd done time in the military, had training that most people couldn't even imagine, and had a reputation that still lingered in certain circles. I wasn't just going to protect my wife. I was going to make these thugs regret ever stepping foot on my driveway. As I walked up, the biggest biker sneered at me. "You must be the husband. The HOA wants you to understand who's in charge here." I didn't say a word at first. I just kept walking toward him, my eyes locked on his. That silence was more terrifying than anything I could have shouted. And that's when the tables started to turn. The first biker stepped forward, trying to block my path. He jabbed a finger into my chest and growled, "Listen, pal, you and your lady need to stop causing problems for the HOA, or things are gonna get ugly." I smiled. Not a friendly smile, but the kind of grin that makes men twice his size suddenly rethink their life choices. "You want ugly?" I said quietly. "You found it." The next 3 minutes were a blur of controlled chaos. When he shoved me, I caught his wrist, twisted, and in one swift move dropped him to his knees. His scream cut through the night, and his buddies froze. Before they could react, I pivoted and slammed my shoulder into another thug's chest, sending him sprawling onto our lawn. The leader roared and swung at me, but his telegraphed punch might as well have been in slow motion. I ducked, drove my elbow into his ribs, and sent him staggering back toward his motorcycle. Now panic flickered in their eyes. My wife, still on the porch, shouted my name, her voice filled with both fear and awe. She had never seen this side of me. Neighbors' lights flicked on, blinds cracked open, suddenly everyone was watching. One biker tried to rush me from behind, but I anticipated it. A quick spin, a kick to his knee, and he collapsed, clutching his leg and howling in pain. Another dropped his chain, backing away. "Man, this ain't worth it," he yelled to the others. But the leader wasn't done. He pulled a knife. That was his mistake. I stepped in close, disarmed him in a single motion, and held the blade at his throat just long enough for him to feel the cold steel. His eyes went wide, and all that bravado drained out of him. "Tell Richard Crane," I whispered, "if he ever sends people to my home again, I won't stop at scaring them." I dropped the knife at his feet and released him. He stumbled back, gasping, while the others scrambled to their bikes. And here's the part they never expected: before they fled, they begged me to stop. The tough bikers who had shown up to terrify my wife were now groveling, shouting promises like, "We're done. We didn't know who you were, and please, man, it's over." 3 minutes. That's all it took for their intimidation to shatter. As their engines roared away, my wife ran into my arms. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face, but she managed a small smile. "I've never been so scared in my life," she whispered, "but I've also never felt safer than I do right now." The neighborhood was buzzing the next day. Everyone had seen or heard what happened. Suddenly, the HOA's power wasn't so absolute anymore. Richard Crane avoided me like the plague. The fines stopped. The threats stopped. And though the HOA still existed, their stranglehold on the community weakened. As for the bikers, they never came back. And from that night on, the HOA learned a hard lesson: you don't mess with a man who has everything to lose and nothing to fear when it comes to protecting his family.